Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. It's June 14th, Trump's birthday, and also the day that the IG at the DOJ, Michael Horowitz, released his big, long-anticipated report.
Well, Betsy, I think you, like myself and others in the conclave, have read the executive review, right? And the conclusions and the recommendations, and it's extremely disappointing, and it is exactly what we predicted it would be. Now, we're going to try to frame again who Michael Horowitz really is, and then we're going to try to frame why it's always the case that anyone who's ever been in the government knows the following phrase: the Inspector General's office is where truth goes to die. Anyone who expected anything from this, which we told you, don't get your hopes up. Those who followed Q and believed in the plan and believed in Sessions and believed in Horowitz and believed in Huber and told to wait, don't worry, it's all coming. The criminals, there's thousands of sealed indictments. Don't you worry, it's all coming, but don't do anything. Just wait. Well, that's the trick of the deep state and the shadow government, is to make everything wait. So how long has it been that he was asked to see if there was any political impropriety between the DOJ and the FBI in the matter of Hillary Clinton's email, espionage, security breach, pay for play? I don't even know all the names you'd have to give it for what it was, which was downgraded to a matter by Loretta Lynch after talking with Bill Clinton, which in this report, they're all exonerated from that. As a matter of fact, this report is pure garbage. It isn't worth the paper it's written on or the 500 people and the tens of millions of dollars that went into it. It's not worth anything.
Well, it is to the people who won't be going to jail because of it.
Well, that's correct. But as we want to make sure everyone understands, if there are no indictments throughout the Inspector General's investigation, there will be no convictions. And we even had Jeff Sessions put in a fake Huber, another SES member, Senior Executive Service member, to come to stand ready to indict anyone who Horowitz found had committed a crime. There are no crimes mentioned in this report. There is an insinuation that one of the next elements that has been dumped on Horowitz's plate in the Inspector General's office, because Jeff Sessions refused to appoint a special counsel to look into the spy. He refused to do anything about the Imran Awan scandal. He refused to do anything about the FISA court abuse. He refused to do anything about the weaponization of the DOJ and the FBI, their collusion. He refused to look into the issue of the CIA starting an illegal counterintelligence operation against Donald Trump and never telling him even after he became the president. They refused to look into whether or not Mueller should have recused himself. Okay, these are all things that have now been dumped on Michael Horowitz. So every time Sessions or Rosenstein or Christopher Wray or any of them go before a congressional testimony, with congressional testimony, they will basically say, oh, don't worry, we're going to have Horowitz look into that. Remember when Trump ordered them to look into this? And what did they do? Before they left the White House, they leaked their conversation with the president to the press on the way to their car to say that they're simply dumping it on Michael Horowitz. They're not even going to follow the order of the commander-in-chief, their boss, to look into the informant spy that was put into the Trump team. We all know who it is, and there were actually a bunch of them. But what happened? Nothing. Horowitz. Michael Horowitz has basically become the heir apparent to Mueller, Comey, and Rosenstein, or Wray. He basically has been groomed to be the next criminal lawyer, DC fixer. He went around in his career, after being placed in all the right places to see how the corrupt money flows and the corrupt fake justice system works, he was then put in the position of training both the corporate world on how to get out of crime and how to get out of criminal prosecution, and training judges on how to sentence them so that no one ever goes to jail and all they do is pay measly fines for ripping off billions. And that's what he did. He taught both sides how to be crooked. And then he became the Inspector General because they knew of some of the messes that were about to happen. And as the Inspector General, he goes around, and what he does is, the evidence he really collected, he's going to use exactly as Comey was using all the laptops, Blackberries, the 33,000 missing Hillary emails, Imran Awan's server, Debbie Wasserman Schultz's laptop, Seth Rich's laptop, were all held and are still being held in James Comey's ex-office, according to what Christopher Wray reported to Congress. So the things that were destroyed weren't destroyed. They were never examined. So if Horowitz couldn't... Now let me explain this. Horowitz was crooked to begin with. He came in crooked. We told you, no, he's not even a gray hat. We told you, at best, he might become slightly gray, but he's a black hat. He is certainly not a white hat. He's certainly not the cavalry. He's certainly not the one we should trust the plan or trust Sessions. No, that's all lies. We told you that. Do not look forward to any convictions coming out of Horowitz at all, ever. That isn't the way the IG works. We pointed this out with the IG in Congress with the Imran Awan espionage case. We pointed it out with the IG's report in the FISA court, which said they were in 100% noncompliance. What happened? They got their hands slapped. So some people will have their hands slapped, and I don't know that Andrew McCabe will be convicted. He's going to fight this with money that people donated $500,000 to his GoFundMe account, so he can defend himself. Paul Manafort, well, he's locked up in his house and had to put all of his properties as bail, and he's not even allowed to talk on the telephone without being accused of more collusion with Russians. It's just disturbing the way that the Democratic side, the Hillary side, the Obama side, is completely acting with impunity, and no one is going to be convicted of jack. Because, you know, this is the old news for Betsy. We've been talking about this since before Mueller was appointed. We told you Comey perjured himself and would demand a special counsel. Guess what? In Horowitz's report, it shows that Comey was threatening a special counsel against Loretta Lynch when he was breaking away from her. So the one thing that the report says is that Comey will be held for insubordination, or could be. That's an internal FBI disciplinary action. That's all that anybody is recommended for in this report. Internal, if Jeff Sessions would wake up and open his eyes or his ears or begin to communicate, he might do something, but they don't have to do anything. Remember, this report is garbage. There are no indictments, there are no convictions, because Huber didn't make them. They would have already happened with the approval of the Department of Justice, because you don't let a criminal just continue to be a criminal. And for those who believed that Bill Priestap was working with Horowitz to turn in people at a higher level like Obama and Loretta Lynch, no, I told you, don't go there. That is not right. Bill Priestap conducted counterintelligence operation against Trump, and not one single time has he ever been asked for much, except when he testified the other day. He kind of threw Andrew McCabe under the bus and kind of, tried to exonerate Comey, but said Comey was a little bit out there too. He didn't really get in any trouble whatsoever. And as we told you, the person who would get in trouble for all of this would be Bill Priestap's head lieutenant. That is, of course, Peter Strzok. And Peter Strzok was involved in all these things. Now, did Horowitz look into... Let's just look into the email thing, okay? That was pay for play. We now know, in the report it even says, as Comey had said before, but he downplayed it, yes, foreign agents had totally penetrated Hillary's server and were coming and going like, I don't know what, flies on dung. It was all pay to play. She and Huma would simply give out the password, and then you could go to the server and get whatever you want. But let's remember, it had already been breached because Imran Awan had all of their passwords, the DNC's passwords, the Democratic National Committee, Podesta's, Hillary's, Huma's, all of it. That was all going to Becerra's office in the Congress. That was the server that was collecting all this information from both Hillary's server, the DNC server, Podesta's emails, all the Blackberries, 80 computers of 40 Democrats under Pelosi's direct instruction who signed up with Imran Awan and then later with Dmitry Alperovitch and his Falcon system that is like another spyware. It doesn't stop any viruses. It simply steals. And he's a Russian, by the way. So you want to talk Russian, Pakistani. You want to talk about emails. You should be talking about the largest espionage case in U.S. history. That would be Imran Awan, because he was smart enough to steal from Hillary, too. He knew that everybody had the password. He knew Podesta's password was password. He was in charge of their accounts. And when he was caught for espionage on 13 counts by the Inspector General of the Congress, what happened? Nothing. The Capitol Police came in and kicked him out of the IT and his 4 other culprits, his family, and he went over to the Democratic National Committee and became an advisor under Debbie Wasserman Schultz's protection, and to this very moment is still protected by Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Rahm Emanuel, who have intervened in his case repeatedly, and no charges of espionage have been filed. So why wasn't Hillary's email investigation that was being looked at by Horowitz for any wrongdoing not seeing these crimes? Because it was only focused on the politicalization of their bias during the email investigation, the mid-term investigation, or mid-year, which is it, mid-year? Anyway, Hillary's unbelievable, on purpose, because she had people charged for these same crimes before they went to jail. She knew exactly what she was doing. This was a pay-to-play scenario. George Soros and his minions needed to see exactly what Podesta and Hillary were doing in the Hillary Victory Fund and in the Democratic National Committee. If you look into the leaks, instead of trying to say the leaks were Russian, if you look into the leaks, because that was the distractor factor. Oh, it's Russians, they hacked us. No, they didn't. Look into what the leaks said. The leaks said that George Soros wrote out the plans for the Democratic National Committee, that George Soros gave way too much money, $6 billion, since the time that he decided Obama should run. And most of it illegal. And many of it through very spurious methods, which we now know. And we also know the $84 million that was scammed out of the states to Hillary was in that computer. We know that Eric Schmidt's template for winning the election through the U.S. Digital Service was in that computer. We know that all these things were in that server, that server at the Democratic National Committee. We know that everything Hillary was doing was in her BlackBerry was connected to her server. Her computers were, her phones were, everything. It would sync when she'd walk by. Anybody who wanted to could sync to her BlackBerry and get into her account in any nation she ever used the BlackBerry in, which was every nation, and she had private communications with Barack Obama on his private telephone, and they talked top secret things while in foreign nations. This is in the report. But is there going to be any indictment or conviction? No. Horowitz found nothing to be wrong with anything any of them did.
Actually, if you look at this in a different way, you'll see it all makes sense. These are senior executive service operatives, and we've named them. It starts at Robert Mueller, Christopher Wray, Michael Horowitz, Jeff Sessions, Rod Rosenstein, Rebecca Priestap, who else? Peter Strzok. All of these people are operatives for this SES. And SES has already infiltrated our legitimate government. And they have already overthrown our government. And why I can say that is because the rule of law is no longer working in America. So that means they are in control of our government.
You are so right. The senior executive service members, the ones you mentioned, and almost everyone. And
I can mention more.
Well, everyone on Mueller's team.
Yes.
By de facto, becomes an SES member.
They all have this, they've infiltrated our government, and this is the way they're going to play it out. So, of course, they're protecting each other, and that's what Michael Horowitz's job is, but you pointed that out back in December 2017.
And what they're doing is the last battle to defend the shadow government, the SES, Senior Executive Service Members, which literally flies their own flag, takes their own oaths of office, and are given rewards that even people who work directly under them can't find any proof of, but we have shown the proof. It is so corrupt, folks. But what we're seeing is all the top administrators, they either have to comply with the SES telling them what to do or just get out.
I just want to go back to this flying their own flag. Yes, they have their own flag. And if you're a civil servant and you're working there in the federal government right now, haven't you ever thought it was strange that this group of employees have their own flag and it's not the United States of America?
They have their own union. They have their own secret messaging service. They all work off the same page, and they rotate their jobs now because of Obama on a regular basis, so the offices they're in control of they may know nothing of. And then we don't want to get into all of that.
But their job is not to know anything about a particular job. It is to obstruct anything that's coming their way. For example, all these things that Trump wants to do, they're obstructed by people within the government who keep it from happening.
And they spend, like Horowitz did, untold tens of millions of dollars, 500 staff people being paid what? To do what? Write another stupid report like Clapper's report on Russian interference in the election, which really was directed by Peter Strzok and Andrew McCabe and the small group when the Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence operation started against Trump. And that's the reason Comey kept saying, no, there's no investigation. There's an operation that I'm lying to you about. You're my boss, you're the commander-in-chief, and the fact that I'm lying to you is the biggest national security breach and attempted coup that could possibly be happening. So I'm not going to tell you, sir, that yes, we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to prosecute you, stop you in the election, stop you as president-elect, stop you from being inaugurated, and then to conduct a coup d'etat to basically kick you out under George Soros's rules of false elections because the deep state says so.
And what makes it even worse is that the senior executive service operatives award these no-bid contracts to Serco. And so then what we have is a company that we've tracked back to Britain actually runs our government. So it's being run by a foreign group.
Robert Mueller and his SS stormtroopers are protecting the likes of Glenn Simpson and his oppositional research group, which is basically some of the biggest criminals in America, working for some of the biggest criminals in the world, Fusion GPS, or Daniel Jones and his group, Penn Quarter Group, which has spent $50 million attacking Trump with money from Oleg Deripaska and George Soros, or the 184 NGOs, non-government organizations, which are far-left organizations like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Southern Poverty Leadership Council. All these groups, $18 billion of stolen money from America, which should have been paid in taxes by George Soros and his quantum hedge fund in Caracas, is being spent to attack Trump as we speak. Now, what's really going on here is that the deep state internationally is working with the shadow government in America to keep Serco, British control of America, and make sure that America is simply ripped apart as a nation and given out to everyone who thinks they deserve a piece of it, like Canada or Mexico or Iran or North Korea or China. No. They need to work on a level playing field, and then we'll find that the people who have been signing all these contracts are the same people who hired Stefan Halper, the informant, the spy, who worked directly with Christopher Steele, and the ex-head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, and the whole group over there. We've named all of them. The corporate intelligence cabal around the Queen and her Privy Council were attacking Trump through Strategic Communications Laboratories and Cambridge Analytica, and through the Global Engagement Center. We've shown all of these things. That's what's being fought for, Betsy. You're right. This is a fight to the death between Trump and the shadow government.
Yes, because what has happened is over Obama's time, they set up the executive office to have this parallel executive office, which is being run by these people. And they kept saying to us that, like, the Department of Justice, his job is to make sure that the president's kept in line. And no, it's not. It's part of the executive branch, and the president is in charge of the DOJ. But they got us thinking, you could hear the propaganda, that the DOJ is somehow separate, a separate branch of government. And that's what they've infiltrated, and that's where they're showing their muscle.
And we know that Obama worked directly with the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Justice, the State Department, everyone but the National Security Agency. He wrote an executive order that said that all collection of NSA would be available to all these agencies because they were all working as a weaponized unit against Trump becoming president, even after he became president. This is sedition, it's treason, and what Horowitz is there to do is to make sure that none of this comes to light. As a matter of fact, Horowitz found only the crimes that were in a little tiny sliver of consideration of politicalization. Well, there is no definition, as you have pointed out earlier today to the conclave. How do you define that someone has political bias? They say that McCabe's mind was that he had a mindset that was biased, but not politically biased. Wait, if he wanted to make sure Trump never became president and Hillary did, hello, is that enough political bias? That they ran a secret society to impeach him even after he was elected, is that enough? That they worked on Crossfire Hurricane and had 12 different names for it until it became the Mueller Special Counsel investigation, that's not enough.
Well, this is why it's very important right now that we all be following Trump tweets, because he needs to get his people in place in Congress and the Senate, and we need to be paying attention to the folks that he's pointing out that he wants to surround himself with. Other folks, we need to get behind the president, and then he won't have this worry about impeachment. And without that worry of impeachment, an impeachment vote, then he can go full steam ahead and cleanse this place.
Absolutely. In his second term, he can turn America around. In this term, he has to take on every single contender. And so far, everyone I've seen him take on, he has won.